Chris, she's such an encouragement. I don't know how you stay in this fight for so long with such a good attitude, continually bringing people together, reminding them of why we're in this, right? I mean, that's what you see her do. She's like, okay, we may have all this drama on the sidelines, but what are we here for? And I think that's a great reminder for all of us. There's so much drama, there's so many attempts at distractions and undermining, but what are we here for? What are we fighting for? To me, she was a great encouragement on that front.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Danielle, it can be very difficult to keep your eye on the ultimate goal, which is to accomplish something that is greater than all of us,
Yeah.
which is the preservation of liberty and freedom in one form or another, government of, by, and for the people. But there are so many distractions, both within and without
That's right.
the ranks and the
That's
movement.
right.
One thing about Democrats, or at least Democrats who are on the opposite side of a lot of these issues than we are, is that you always know where they stand. You at least always know what their position is on things and who the adversary is. But within our own party, very often, it could be difficult to know who's your friend and who's your enemy, who's fighting with you and who's fighting against you, which really makes it even more difficult to
Yeah.
to achieve the objectives.
Yeah. And I hope it's just as difficult on the left and they just put on a better face than us. I don't know. But one thing I loved that Holly brought up is that the National Association of Secretaries of State, need to be investigated. And I absolutely agree with that. I 100% agree with that because, there is some kind of collusion going on there, in my opinion. And what I observe, Chris, is something that I know that we've discussed, which is, look, the Louisiana Secretary of State put forward this legislation to inhibit free speech through exit polling and only allowing, quote unquote, bona fide media outlets to conduct exit polls in Louisiana. And then shortly after that, we see the arrest of Colonel Reynolds for exit polling. And so I think think that the patterns have to be acknowledged. When we see one Secretary of State do something to silence speech, and then we see it happen somewhere else, we can't assume that it's just a coincidence.
Exactly. And it's not just a coincidence. What the two scenarios that you described have in common, Danielle, is that they are both an effort on the part of the entrenched establishment to suppress the ability of citizens to seek redress about things that are wrong with our system. They're trying to retard that process, and it's absolutely outrageous what happened, to Colonel Reynolds. And there's no doubt that that was the political establishment, the Republican establishment in Arkansas, doing that to him. It was the Republican establishment in Louisiana prohibiting now Louisiana citizens from being able to conduct lawful exit polls. There's no doubt about it. But it's all designed to suppress our ability to participate vigorously in our own government. That's what it all comes down to.
And I don't know where we go from here, but do you know, did anyone conduct an exit poll or attempt to conduct an exit poll in the last Louisiana election just a couple weeks ago?
Not that I know of. Not
All
that I
right.
know of.
So we may not have that opportunity until the primaries in they've been moved to May.
Yeah, they're now moved to May, and so, but I certainly am hopeful, and I encourage Louisiana citizens who are listening to our show to go and do the application, whatever it is that you have to do with the Secretary of State to get the credential to be able to do an exit poll. And when you're denied, I'm telling you that gives you standing to bring a lawsuit alleging a violation of your constitutional rights. And that's exactly what it is. And, I still intend to talk to Paul Hurd and others about bringing a civil action on this, alleging the constitutionality of that law, because it's abhorrent to everything that we're supposed to believe in, not only as Republicans, but as constitutional Americans.
That's it. Yeah, we're not asking for favoritism for anyone. We're asking for a level playing field, and that's all we've ever asked for.
Yes, maybe one day, Danielle, if we can garner the stellar reputation for integrity and honor and truth telling that CNN enjoys in the country, then maybe we'll qualify with our Secretary of State to do an exit poll. But, we might not be able to reach that stature overnight.
Well, I guess we won't. I guess we won't reach CNN's stature overnight. Their reputation.
Well, hope springs eternal, Danielle. Hope springs eternal.
It does. It does. And living kind of a decompartmentalized life. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be a more spiritual conversation with him. And then Thursday, we have, let me just double check. Actually, I'm really excited about Thursday as well. Back here on the State of Freedom, we're going to have, let me just double check that I get his name correct because I don't want to missay it. But the gentleman who's been leading for the McCullough Foundation, the studies that have just been released over the last 2 weeks pointing to autism as a main factor in, or vaccines as a main factor in autism. I think his first name's Nicholas, and I think his last name starts with an H. I'm sorry, forgive me,
And you're talking,
folks.
Danielle, about vaccines. You're talking about vaccines generally. And Danielle, by the way, if you talk to Senator Bill Cassidy, our august incumbent U.S. senator, the consensus, and there really doesn't need to be any more study or investigation into this, is that vaccines don't cause autism. He said it. The
Well, it
CDC has
must be
said it.
true. It must
Yeah,
be
the
true.
medical,
Look how
our public agencies have said it. So, might as well close the door on that one, right? It's got to be true.
Yeah. Well, the CDC has lost so much credibility. In my view, they almost need to be completely wiped out and start fresh. But, if refurb and restoration can happen, they need to be honest about this. And I know that RFK Jr. Has a lot of work cut out for him in terms of being able to rid the ranks of people who, for whatever reason, just want to go with the status quo, whether it's for nefarious reasons or whether it's because they just legitimately believe that they're doing the right thing, even though the evidence points elsewhere. So the gentleman coming on the show, Chris, on Thursday, his name's Nicholas Hulsher. He's the administrator and epidemiologist in charge of Dr. McCullough's foundation.
That's going to be really, really exciting and
Yeah,
informative.
I'm looking
You
forward to
know,
that one.
Danielle, final note here. Speaking of this issue, in what world would anybody think that there's something wrong with questioning and doubting the official proclamations of federal public health agencies that receive so much money, massive amounts of money from the very industry that is pushing the vaccines that they're supposed to regulate to make sure that they're actually efficacious, that they're going to accomplish what they're supposed to do, and even more importantly, that they're not harmful to the people receiving them. How can you possibly expect to be able to rely on the official recommendations of an agency like that when they are so captive to the very industry that they're supposed to be regulating? I don't understand how any American can look at that situation and not be doubtful about what they're telling us.
Well, true. The same applies, Chris, to our elections. The agencies here, the federal agencies will tell you that everything is fine. The same is true for the DoD, right? All of the revolving door of defense contractors are going to tell you that we need X, Y, and Z. It's because we are living in state capture. I mean, that's the reality of it, whether it's big pharma, whether it's big elections, whether it's big tech, whether it's big defense.
Yeah,
They all have something to gain from what they're telling us. And I think that has to change.
that has to change.
Yeah.
That's exactly why so many Americans, increasing numbers of Americans, view with great skepticism anything that our government tells us about anything. And they should. Yet we still live in a country where a lot of people just reflexively and blindly accept whatever the government authorities tell us about things. And to me, it boggles my mind. How many times do we have to be lied to before we stop believing the liar? Fortunately, Danielle, people across the country are waking up, and I thank
Yeah.
God for that.
Yeah, I do too, Chris. I
Yeah.
absolutely do too. We say it, I say it so often, but the elections are the linchpin for it all. If we can fix our elections, the rest of everything can get cleared out. But
Yeah.
until we can trust that the people who are in positions of authority actually were put there by people, actually are responsive to the people who legitimately put them there, are actually held accountable by the people who put them there. Until that happens, it's impossible to think that some of these other massive issues can be addressed meaningfully.
No question about it. The only way to hold them accountable ultimately is to know that our votes reflect our intent and a majority of what the voters want. And and I'm not sure that in every case that's occurring. But as you said at the start, Danielle, there is no such thing as quit. And we're going to continue forward, continue fighting